Greetings, dear friends. We're sincerely glad to welcome you again. And today we're going to talk with the esteemed Igor Mikhailovich Danilov.
Greetings.
Igor Mikhailovich, last time when we talked about the Eye of God experiment and summarized its results, you said important words that this experiment was the most significant over the past 20 years, and that all the people who participated in this experiment matured a little bit. You know, this is really so because it is common to think of maturity as the ability to take responsibility. One can trace exactly this kind of transformation in people because after going through the experiment, people were already saying that the biggest threat to our planet and our humanity is the belief that someone other than us will solve this problem. If before there was such a hope that some good, honest ruler would be able to build a bright and beautiful future for us without our direct participation, then after the experiment, and especially after what you told us about El, about his fate and this very story, this instructive historical example and lesson, of course, a sudden transformation of thinking takes place. And a great many people said, we are not ready to hand over power to some ruler with some technology and tools. And there is a willingness for power to be distributed among all people in the creative society, in fact.
This is actually the right thing to do. Do you know what is interesting? The interesting thing is that this experiment has led to the fact that out of the 3 stages of building the creative society, 2 are left. And people are right.
Yes, people have reconsidered many things.
They are absolutely right. Why? Because it wasn't quite correct to keep such a stage as the political one. But a lot of people wanted that. For some reason, many people thought that during building the creative society, our representatives had to enter into the structures of power, congresses, senates, become deputies, or whatever else. Yet, they were supposed to enter into these structures, form a majority, and in this way, sort of support the creative society. And then we would be able to build the creative society more simply and easily. It is clear that this is one of the stages in the development of the creative society and of us, the volunteers, sort of our evolution, the evolution of our mentality, perception, and attitude towards this world. We are also evolving and learning, after all, right? And it is wonderful that thanks to this experiment, many people understood. I think the most important thing about this political stage, which has simply been removed. Why? We too mentioned that, yes, this way is also possible. And basically, nothing bad would happen if, with the support of people who share the idea of creative society, the deputies who support the creative society, who accept it and wish to build it themselves, joined structures of power, and thus could help to incorporate the 8 pillars in the constitution of a particular country. However, a problem arose, and this problem arose in the aspect that, with the implementation of the 8 pillars in the constitution and their enforcement in a single country, in any case, and irregardless of what country, such a country would become less competitive in the consumerist format. If these 8 pillars came into effect, however precious and desirable they may be to us, they would be just as disastrous for a country in the consumerist format. Why? Let me explain, friends. Imagine the first pillar. We all know it, right? There is nothing more valuable than human life. In the consumerist format, in a single country, be it even the strongest and most powerful one. Yet this pillar forbids wars, in the literal sense of the word. We should regard human life as the highest value on this planet. This is wonderful, but it is wonderful and can only be achieved in the creative society, because even the strongest country would become defenseless. Why? Because we shouldn't maintain an army We shouldn't use any instrument of violence or even defend our territorial integrity against invasive actions of other countries. Would such countries show up in the consumerist format? Definitely. Well, and there are many other things. Thus, we would put our own country in danger. Besides, the country wouldn't cope financially. Why? Because imagine every citizen in a given country has to receive a basic income equivalent to approximately $10,000, as we said, right? Well, maybe more or less. That's for people to decide. But imagine even $10,000 received by people every month in a given country.
Right, where to get such amounts?
Well, for people, this is great, but where would the country get those funds? In the creative society, this is solved easily and simply. There are no problems there. Whereas in a single country, in the consumerist format of this world, it's a big problem. That is to say, it would be useless to spend a lot of our energy and time trying to improve people's lives in a single country, whatever it may be. Through introducing into the political power structures those people who support the creative society, we would only make people's lives worse. Another thing that was quite important and interesting is that there were even candidates who declared that they were going into politics on behalf of the creative society. We know them. We've heard them. That's great. And we thank those people very much for supporting the creative society this way. But the creative society doesn't exist yet, friends. Whom do they represent? You and us. I mean, the volunteers, the Creative Society Project. Well, that may well be, but not the creative society. This is, let's say, a little funny. And the most important thing shown by this experiment as of today, friends, and this is indeed so, is that whatever agreements we make with politicians, although we also discussed that a politician can make an agreement with people on the preliminary electoral platform, and if he fails to comply, we will recall him. However, the problem is that there is no legal tool we could use to recall a person who, by supporting the creative society, would enter into political power structures and then stop implementing what he promised to people. Let's be honest. Today, almost all politicians, with a rare exception, promise a lot, then come and do exactly the opposite. And we, as the electorate, can do nothing to them until the next election, when they literally start promising us lots of things again, knowing full well that they aren't going to do anything. And it happens every time. Friends, after all, it's true. We believe them. We hope. Why? Because we want things to improve. We hope that the next person will enter into the structures of power. We will delegate our own authority to him, and he will rule over us and improve our lives, like a caring parent, so to speak. However, we are adult and intelligent people, and we understand perfectly well that any politician who joins the government takes care first of himself, then of his relatives, close people and friends, and lastly, of the people who brought him to power and endowed him with such a high authority. This is really so. We are all like that. After all, this is what our experiment has shown, at least for those who approached it in a serious and mature way and participated conscientiously. We all have seen that El lives in each of us, and whatever politician we endow with power, he will step on the same rake anyway, meaning he will make the same mistakes all other politicians make. But those are mistakes only for us, while for them, it is normal everyday life. We would like a miracle to happen and them to become different. Well, that's the way it is supposed to be, and that's the way it is. Let's just say, as of today, if any politician says that he supports the creative society and that he will not renounce this idea when he comes to power, then we will certainly support him during elections because he is a volunteer of the Creative Society project. However, we must be perfectly aware that this politician, even if he is running on behalf of a certain party, for example, as a deputy, for Congress, or something else, when he comes to power, he must abide by the rules of his party and take care of his party first, then of his country. And he must do what he has to do. Then he will already take care of himself. It's just that while holding a prominent post, he can continue the first stage of building the Creative Society. That is, he can inform other people as well. This is the maximum we can get from a politician who has come to power. That is, informing people, nothing more. And not the implementation of anything. Why? Because we understand that this is impossible. For example, if quite a few people join some structure of power, even if they support and share the idea of the Creative Society, can they do anything good if this doesn't harm their country? They can, but if in the consumerist format, this will somehow threaten the integrity of their country or the well-being of the citizens in that country, they won't be able to do that, you see? So the point is that we, as volunteers of the Creative Society, must not harm our countries in any way. No matter what country we are in and what country we are citizens of, we must, first and foremost, take care of our country as well. Why? Because we live in this country, and other people live in it, just like in any other country. And we must not create situations that would in any way threaten our countries, our citizens, and their well-being, as well as our own well-being. Because the Creative Society is aimed at improving life, at improving the quality of life. Well, in fact, in the Creative Society, people should receive not just freedom, but also a high standard of living. We should use all available technologies in order to make our lives beautiful, in order to get rid of diseases, to get rid of restrictions such as energy. For example, right? Few people think about this, friends, but I'll tell you this. The era of fuel-free generators is coming, and very soon, everyone will see that we will get away from hydrocarbons. Not completely, of course. They will still be used, but not nearly in such amounts and quantities. Why? Because this ban on fuel-free generators will be canceled any day now. There are already so many of them in the world, of various modifications. These are quite functional devices, which are already widely used in various households, businesses, and the like. And in the near future, it can all become available to the entire humankind. And it is natural that such a large, I would say, industry as hydrocarbons, their extraction and sale, as well as manipulation of people and countries by means of these resources, will also cease to exist. It is clear that there will be other issues in the consumerist format through which we can also be manipulated. And just an information field is more than enough to manipulate our opinions, to mislead and divide us. That's how the consumerist format is arranged. It's just that we can change it only in the Creative Society. In the consumerist format, we won't be able to change it. Is there any way we can influence people to start telling the truth so that journalists become real journalists and not corrupt mouthpieces? Excuse me. They say whatever they are paid for, without delving into details. And even when they delve into details and agree with the ideas, like some journalists who have been hired to sling mud at the Creative Society as well. After all, they themselves, just by studying it, were inspired and actually liked this project, and they agree with its ideas as people. Why? Because it is aimed also at their well-being. and their freedom, but they were forced, like Judas, to write bad things for 30 pieces of silver in order to somehow earn the money they had been paid. And here's, again, a dilemma. Are they bad? Or is the world? The situation itself is such. In fact, why do people often become criminals? Because the living conditions are such. Because people have no money to live on. People have no money to cure their relatives and friends. Because healthcare is sometimes expensive. When relatives and friends are in danger, a person looks for any way to help them. Then he gets drawn in. And then it becomes a norm of life. Once you break the law, it's already hard to go back because you find yourself beyond the line. And there's a question here. Who drives people beyond the line of morality, ethics, and law? Don't we ourselves? People do that. Of course it is us, people, who create and maintain these conditions in the consumerist format. When people are forced to fight against each other, sometimes losing their health, life, and liberties in order to survive somehow. But if we change it all, can everything change? Of course it can. Yes, for a while, we will keep acting out of habit, but this will quickly pass. We can change everything. We can defeat crime. Why? Because no one will have to commit it. When a punishment is indeed inevitable, and there is no reason for a crime, when the world is beautiful and you are protected, does a person have to make anyone unhappy in order to live and be happy? No, it's not necessary. And everyone understands that very well. All people are actually good. But life sometimes turns in such a way that people are forced to become bad. And this is really a problem which can only be solved in the creative society. In the consumerist format, we will not solve it. I would also like to note that this Eye of God experiment has opened the eyes of many people to the truth. We have really become more mature. We understand what power is. We understand who resides in us, in fact, and who sometimes controls us. This is indeed so. In this case, it's already hard to accuse anyone of those who are in power of acting unfairly, wrongly, or whatever, or not the way we want them to, simply because we have understood what power is and how much it poisons people. Yes, we can rid humanity of this poison by turning it into a pleasant and useful medicine for each and everyone. I mean, by sharing this power among all people. This is really the best option, because every person will be responsible for their own future and for the whole world. And this is wonderful. This really makes people closer, more akin, and most importantly, more responsible and mature. This is good. But for this, again, the creative society is needed. Why? Because there's only one cure for this disease, the disease of power. It is freedom. And only the creative society can give freedom to a person. In the consumerist format, a person cannot have. Not a single person in the world can have true freedom. Even those who rule this world are dependent on so many circumstances. Also, you need to understand how this world is arranged. When a person climbs to the pinnacle of power, and once he attains it, he tries to get rid of those who knew his weaknesses, who saw him climbing. We often encounter such situations in life. As people say, a revolution devours its children. That is, it gets rid of those who made it, or rather, those who know how it was made. Why? Because power always tries to sort of purge itself. We've heard a lot about this, but in reality, if we simplify it all in order to understand it, power is nothing but you and us, the people. But if, under certain conditions, we can rise above other people and control their destinies, we First and foremost, start thinking of ourselves. Do we then have compassion for people? Well, yes, in a way, more in a philosophical way. But if, let's say, our ratings and other people's lives are on the scales, we will always choose our ratings. That's the truth of life. That's the way our life is. I'll give you a simple example from my own life. It so happened that a man who was in power in a certain region, it doesn't matter, he found himself in a situation where his life was in real danger. That is, to put it simply, my friends and I helped him to preserve his life. It so happened that for a whole week I saw him crying and unwilling to part with his life and all that. Eventually, it so happened that he remained alive and well and retained his position in society. Everything was fine. In other words, we helped him. And just a few months passed, and I had a certain issue. The issue was very simple and easy to solve. Yes, it was a legal one, but petty. And it was just impossible to work around this man because this had to be solved at his level. I made an appointment to see him, just like everyone else. Although I had his telephone number, of course, but I didn't allow myself to act that way. After waiting my turn, I entered his office, smiled like an old acquaintance, and said, "Good afternoon." I just waited for his invitation. He said, "Please have a seat." So I sat down, and he said, "What is your last name and what's your issue?" It was like he was meeting me for the first time. Literally, after a few months, I said, "That's okay, thank you. It's nothing. I just wanted to see you. Thank God, you are alive and well." I turned around and walked away because I realized there was no point in talking to this man anymore. Why? Again, friends, it's not because he was ungrateful. It's because that's the way the world is arranged. He got back his status in this world. He preserved his own life and authority. Let's put it so. It was real authority. But I saw his weaknesses, and he was extremely uncomfortable with that. Therefore, he tried in every possible way to erase those moments of his own weaknesses from his memory. However, life is a very interesting thing. Several events happened in his life, literally in a very short period of time. This man got a promotion, a serious one. And along with the promotion, he fell ill. He had a spine disease, a sequestered herniated disc, and he needed surgery. His close friends told him, "There's Igor Mikhailovich. Let's go and see him." They knew me closely. But he said, "Well, I would go, but I behaved indecently towards him." In other words, the man was aware that he had behaved indecently, and he couldn't step over himself, even when he had to decide whether to undergo surgery abroad or to remove the hernia without surgery. Meanwhile, I really dealt with such cases, and quite successfully, thank God. So the person failed to step over himself. He went abroad and underwent surgery in one of the best clinics in the world. This is really true. He came back home literally a few days later because everything was quickly resolved there. But the wound hadn't healed yet, despite the fact that the surgical intervention had been careful and minimally invasive, let's say. I mean, the wound was small, but an infection was brought in. And unfortunately, to my true regret, the person developed a serious pathology, blood poisoning. They tried to fight it, but in less than a year from the moment we got acquainted, this man who had sometimes experienced a lot of tough moments, so to say, but at the same time good ones too, because of stupidity and banal fears, left this world and lost his opportunity to gain something greater. Why? Because sometimes we do very stupid, wrong things due to our own pridefulness and self-importance. in order to preserve this very illusion of power over others. Well, who hasn't encountered such or similar situations in their life? Or to put it simply, who hasn't encountered simple elementary situations when you come for some kind of a certificate, a banal piece of paper that is supposed to be issued for you by law without asking you anything? But the person who issues them is already endowed with power over you. At this point, he begins to exercise it over you, demanding additional unnecessary papers or offering you to come after an inconvenient period of time or at an inconvenient hour, simply because he has the authority, and it's in his power to issue this paper or not. This is our human essence. And this is where everything negative that exists in us is manifested. And it is precisely in the creative society that we must get rid of it all. Understanding and knowing all our weaknesses, all of them in us as humans, we must eradicate our entire negativity by creating such conditions where our entire negative beastly component will not be able to manifest itself. Then there will be a wonderful world. I think it's not difficult to do that, and it is quite realistic to build it all. Again, in our present-day existence, it is our craving for power that is to blame for everything, as we have already become convinced during the experiment. And it is us who create this consumerist world the way it is. Just look. Many people sent us the results of their experiment, for which we thank them very much. And they actually described how they used this tool of power. At first, they did it carefully and reluctantly, but in personal, selfish interests in their family or among their closest circle. That was the first stage. But later on, a lot of people almost completely destroyed this world. Why? Because they had tremendous power. This is actually the entire point, friends. And whoever we would put in charge of all of us, we will still create problems for ourselves and a new L. So it is better to make this world free from authority and free from people who, because of our choice, are forced to suffer and torment themselves when controlling us, right?
Yes, to create a world where people would not have to fight for anything.
Of course.
Indeed, in the creative society, there will be a health capsule, a replicator, and fuel-free generators. So many people wrote that there is nothing to fight for, as it turns out, and to get attention if you serve for the benefit of society.
I agree. But for many people, unfortunately, as of today, that very replicator or that very health capsule sounds science fictional. Quite recently, FFGs also sounded science fictional, but now this technology can no longer be refuted. Everyone understands that FFGs exist because they already exist openly. However, there are also replicators. Yes, they require a little bit of work, a little bit of effort, and the same applies to the health capsule. After all, humanity made many attempts, and sometimes they were quite successful. When humanity was practically on the threshold, I'm talking about our times, on the threshold of the greatest discoveries that could restore our health completely and entirely. Moreover, if we take the issue of prolonging human life, as of today, there are already a lot of positive, excellent results in this field. And the most interesting thing regarding prolongation of human life beyond the species limit is that there are already a significant number of various approaches that give positive results. Or, to put it simply, there are a lot of doors leading to this room of our long-term wonderful existence in healthy young bodies. I mean, there are quite many solutions, and quite a lot is already known about this today. And there are good results. In other words, this is no longer science fiction either.
Was there a health capsule in the times of L?
There wasn't. Technologically, they could make it. But a health capsule gives independence, while independence is, first and foremost, people's freedom. Whereas L was good in the beginning, but then he became a tyrant. Naturally, he wouldn't have given people an opportunity to possess such technologies as a replicator, an FFG, and a health capsule. Why? Because thus, a person becomes absolutely independent. He can retreat to a cave or anywhere else and can live beautifully and happily.
This point is very interesting, and it gives an understanding that if power is concentrated in the hands of one person, this always involves restriction.
Of course.
On the development of technology,
Right.
there is always a certain ceiling.
Well, look, if we go back to that very L again, in fact, ordinary people were not given such opportunities as prolonging life at all. While for his relatives and friends, L used Amrita. That is, once in every 40 days, a person had to receive another portion of it, and only from L's hands. There was no other way to acquire one's immortality and excellent health. Is this power?
This is control.
This is control and enormous power, even over near and dear people. In other words, he controlled everything entirely. Why? Because he was afraid of everyone. Did he live in peace? No. He was worried. He was worried about his power, and he was worried that he might be attacked. It is clear that Vajra, in his hands, did a lot. However, if he could use Vajra on other people, which was sometimes done and quite on a large scale, so to say, he could not use it on his relatives and friends because they were his near and dear people. And in fact, it was his entourage who maintained the real power for him, because he didn't see other people, but he saw and continuously communicated with that group of individuals. They were dear to him, his children, his family, his companions, but he had to control them somehow. And the best means of control was exactly Amrita, meaning it was a tool of power. There are numerous tools of this kind, in fact. Aren't a lot of various tools being used nowadays to make us dependent, friends? A whole lot. Right?
Yes. You know, Igor Mikhailovich, this greatly expands an understanding of the extent to which the creative society is indeed a society of freedom, from the perspective that the FFG, that very matter replicator and that very health capsule really make people independent. Besides, the very path of building the creative society is not a path of a revolution that kills those who have brought someone to power, but it's a peaceful path, a path of evolutionary development. Also, there is an understanding, and many people shared after the experiment, that recalling the Knights Templar and how money corrupted them, people understand that the creative society is the only way out because it is a society where money ceases to exist. Thus, we understand that the sixth pillar of the creative society, which speaks of unfolding one's inner potential and creative abilities, is only possible in a society where there is no power in the hands of one person. There emerge a lot of insights thanks both to the experiment and to our current videos, which expand those insights. And they already become sort of very firmly, fundamentally established inside. Thus, we realize that the creative society is indeed the only way out to save us and actually build a society of free and happy people for real.
This is really so. And you've said everything right. But I will say that everyone wants this, yet not everyone understands it, because not everyone knows that in the creative society, a person can really get what you've just listed. So our task is to ensure that there are practically no such people left in this world, so that everyone understands that the creative society is precisely aimed at making all of us, almost everyone, happy, healthy, and young for many, many years, and at unfolding our potentials, which unfortunately we cannot unfold in the consumerist format due to various reasons, right?
We will do our best to eliminate these gaps in people's understanding of what the creative society is.
You know, First of all, we ourselves should understand the entire depth of what the creative society is. After all, we are also evolving. Thank God, right, friends? We ourselves begin to understand a lot. Just look, we have already removed one of the stages, the political one, as we started discussing.
This is very important.
This already indicates our evolvement and our understanding of the fact that it is pointless to run around politicians, and even more so, to try to make any of them happy, to put a person in power over us and hope that he will resolve something for us. He will not resolve. Our only way and opportunity is to speak and communicate with people. If people have a desire and there is a will of the entire humankind, there will definitely be the creative society. But it depends on us whether people will learn about it or not. If they do not know what the creative society is and what benefits it brings to them, how will they be able to support it and vote for it? A simple question, right? Therefore, everything depends on us. And we should start with love for one another, friends. So let's just love one another. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, friends. Peace be with you and God's love.